So that's the framework mentally that I want to advocate changing for, is if we make them more valuable, more of them will stay. And it's this like rising tide effect, because it means that it's the better our workers do, the better our supervisors are, the better our managers are. And again, you can spend your money and put your energy into people, and you do it well, it's going to make the business more money. So instead of squeezing people to get all the work out of them, this is about lifting them up so they bloom. And it is the blooming, growing employee that drives the success of a restaurant.
Welcome back to another episode of the Prosper Brief, the show dedicated to elevating the future of the food service and hospitality industry. I am your host, Jeremiah Wynn, and today we have a special guest. He's a friend of the show, Dan Simons, founder and co-owner at Founding Farmers Restaurant Group. Dan and I had a great conversation about loyalty during NRA weekend, and we decided that the best place that we should continue the conversation is right here. So let's stay tuned. Attention emerging leaders in food service and hospitality. Are you ready to accelerate your career? If so, join us for the Accelerate Conference on October 22nd through the 24th at the Omni Hotel in Dallas, Texas. Gain insights from over 1,000 collective years of business and leadership experience. Engage in more than 30 focused breakout sessions. Be inspired by 5 empowering general sessions featuring industry experts. Don't miss this opportunity to build valuable connections and elevate your leadership talent to give your business the competitive edge it deserves. Register today at prosperaccelerate.com. Dan, welcome back to the Prosper Brief. How are you, man?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be back.
No, thank you for being back, man. You're a friend of the show, and I've always wanted to say that. So it's just good to have you back and just get your perspective on loyalty and just on your history, man. Our conversation we had at NRA, it was really based off of someone who I know who's kindly going through a situation at his job, where his loyalty is, he's so loyal to the point where it's actually hurting him. And we had a great conversation because you told me about moments in your career where you realize you had to kind of like, as much as you loved your employees, as much as you loved the job, because you couldn't even financially pay for them, you had to actually take a step back and actually just really, you had to quit. You had to accept it as a fail and move forward. Can you kind of like go through that with us and what your process was like when you had to, when you faced that failure?
I've had the opportunity to see this loyalty topic through my own eyes as an employee and as an employer. And so I feel like I've tried to collect the sort of wisdom through pain, wisdom through, mistakes and confusion sometimes on this topic. So I'm glad you're talking about it. I think there's valuable guidance, to be shared, reflected on, and discussed when it comes to what's fair to expect from an employee and what's fair to expect from oneself and what is owed to others. So I can share some of my experiences. My first restaurant, and anytime I say ever since I've been an entrepreneur, everything I've done is with my partner, Mike Vakarovich. So I don't have a my restaurant. I have an our restaurant. It's all, so whatever pronoun I use, it's me and Mike, and it's we and it's us and it's our. So our first restaurant failed. And as we were headed towards closure, which of course we didn't realize and know that we were failing, like we were, trying to do all the right things. We believed that we could make it successful. I didn't want to let people go. These were, colleagues and hourly workers and staff that I had known for a long time, because we hired several folks who worked for us when we worked for another company, and then they came with us when we were doing our own thing. And I found myself in a situation where, as an employer, my loyalty to the employees was actually a detriment to the business. You don't want to cut someone's hours back. You don't want to let someone go because they're supporting a family and supporting themselves, and that they've been loyal to the business. They're on the grind. They do the work. They're always there. And what I learned through those experiences where if the relationships are actually as deep and valuable as I believe, I should have the conversation, regardless of my business card, title, any of that. It's still person to person conversation. And so I learned in those experiences that actually, if you sit down and you talk to someone and say, hey, this is a situation I'm in. It feels like rock in a hard place, and I'm worried about you, and I'm worried about me, and I'm not sure who's worried to prioritize. And I wanted to talk to you about it. It's a really, it's a vulnerable conversation. It's an open conversation. And it's just the facts. Like, that's just truth. Business doesn't always go the way that you want it to. But I found that the relationships, when you approach it that way, can really be preserved. It doesn't matter at that point, oftentimes. Okay, so people lose their jobs. You have to go, we culminated in actually having to close the restaurant. Now, we paid out every single employee through the last day. And when we told our employees with a couple weeks' notice that the restaurant would be closing, we said, and anyone who stays and works with us the whole way will get an extra, a couple $100 as a bonus. Well, that money that Mike and I spent to pay our people in that time, we were just borrowing it on our credit cards. Like, we had dug such a deep hole for ourselves. But we decided that they had already given us so much loyalty over the prior 18 months, 2 years, that sure, we could have saved money or said, oh, well, businesses don't really owe people that much. Like, the business is now over. What are we doing? But the fact is, when we looked at the whole equation, they'd invested in us, and it was just the right thing to do. So I just share that to say that sometimes it takes a bigger lens than just the money and the value and the work are this week. And so that's just one of my big takeaways on the larger perspective.
What did that situation reveal to you as who you were as a leader?
I think it showed me that even in the face of fear, that we could lead with our values and our character. And when I say fear, the fear of, it wasn't just the fear of failure. We were failing. We were going broke. Like, that episode culminated in, living in my mother-in-law's basement for 3 years. And so, but with fear, it can paralyze you. You can run away from it, or you can run towards it. And so I learned that I ran towards it, and which means run towards the conversations, run towards the communication, and take it head on. You never until you're in situations like being an armchair quarterback is easy, but until four defensive linemen are trying to kill you, you don't know what it's like to be the quarterback. Fortunately, I'll never know that kind of fear. But I think that's one of the things that we learned, and I learned about myself as a leader. And the other is simply that near death or like near business death and actual business death scenarios, they're not human death. And so you can maintain your character and what you value throughout the most difficult business times simply because you can. You don't control your own death, but you do maintain your hands on the steering wheel during that business car crash, to mix a few metaphors.
Wow. Wow, that's so great, man. And like, as you're talking, the one thing that I'm kind of like seeing is the transparency. Do you feel like transparency builds loyalty?
I do. And I don't think there's actually anything that builds, deepens, amplifies loyalty more than transparency. The truth is simply the truth. And when you deliver the truth in either a heartfelt way, or at least not in an offensive way, it's just the truth. Like, how can you be mad at me because the truth is so bad for you? Well, but it's still the truth. And so I think about my life, my business partnership, which is, Mike and I have now, worked together for 30 years, been business partners for, over 20 years. And we just tell each other the truth. We don't always like it, but boy, it deepens the loyalty.
Wow, that's really great. Do you feel like in your past, before you started your own businesses, do you feel like there was a lack of transparency that you saw with other employers? And did that have an effect on you to where you did decide and make the effort to be transparent as a leader?
I started my first job, I was 14 years old. My first restaurant job, I was 18 years old. And through my whole career, we didn't start our company until I was 33. So I worked for other people for a long time. And I rarely saw full transparency. I most of the time saw people play their cards close to their vest, hold information tight, all of those cliches, whether due to their own insecurities, their own inability to sort of like tackle the truth, or just when people just value themselves over others so much that they just don't communicate. Then some people take it as so far as deception. And I saw all of that. And it was apparent to me the whole time that that wasn't a good idea. What those employers wanted from me was my absolute best work. They missed the opportunity to get my absolute best work in those moments where they revealed to me that they really weren't all in from me. And just think about it, right? If I said to you, "Hey, I want you to give me 100% of you, but I'm only going to give you 80% of me." It's like not a good trade. Like I got an idea. You're going to give me $10. I'm going to give you $6 back. You're like, why would I do that? What kind of relationship is that? And so at the same time, I had plenty of experiences. And by the way, my now business partner, Mike V, was my boss. So if you want an example of where loyalty, transparency, integrity, willingness to have the tough conversations leads to amazing relationships because of the way Mike engaged with me when he was my boss, inspired me to want to be his business partner. And, we've built now, we had 10 years where he was, let's say, above me. And now we've got 20 years as partners. And I think I'm a pretty good partner. Like he got that and gets the best out of me because of the way he invested in that relationship when he didn't have to, right? Like he had the power structure, but he didn't abuse that. He embraced that, and that's what led to such a great relationship we have long term.
That's great. So transparency is a key indicator. When the leadership is transparent, it allows loyalty to start to be cultivated. What else does earned loyalty look like from that perspective and that dynamic?
Well, earned loyalty comes back and forth in ways that we just see performance and the quality of the work and the introductions to other employees, the referrals, the who you bring people, the attraction of more talent, the retention rates. Like when you think about the ripples off of uh, transparency magnifies and builds loyalty. And what does loyalty get you? You make a real fast jump to understand if you want to optimize the P&L, go back upstream to people and relationships, and pretty quickly you get to loyalty. You realize it is one of the roots of a winning P&L over the long term.
That's a great point. So if someone's in a place, if someone is working at a restaurant and you aren't seeing that, you aren't seeing them invite people in, you aren't seeing that happiness, but yet they're stuck there, they're there. What is that called? Because it can't be loyalty.
Yeah. So I see this and I think of it as misplaced loyalty. And we get this from workers in our industry, I think, far too much. People are in the hospitality industry because they love to serve. they inherently put others first. They put themselves second. They put their employer first, and they put themselves second. And it's like being in, this might sound extreme, but to me, it's being in an abusive relationship. That if you really write it down on paper and you're like, wait, what do I get out of this? And what do they get out of this? And how does it make me feel? And what's it going to do to me staying in this relationship over a year or 2 years or 3 years? Employees that stay in places where they aren't actually valued, they're not given all the information that really they deserve to be given, but they stay because they're loyal. They stay because of like the mission and they signed up and they made it a commitment. Maybe they stay because they don't think they deserve any better. Maybe they stay because of the relationships they've had in their personal lives or how they were brought up, where unfortunately they were taught that they didn't deserve all of the positives that I'm advocating for. And so they remain loyal, but it's misplaced loyalty, because what are they really getting in return except something between actually what's directly bad for them, the way they're made to feel, and what is just neutral. I mean, if you're staying in neutral, you're going backwards. So if your boss in your company isn't developing you, helping you grow as a person, building your skills, building your own value, and they're just leveraging your work to build enterprise value, you're being taken advantage of. And that's where I think people need to convert that misplaced loyalty to their company to loyalty to themselves. And you got to take care of yourself before you can really take care of others. So I encourage those employees, those workers, wherever you are in a company org chart, that if it's not really truly valuable for you, if it's just transactional, it's the paycheck, you deserve better than that. You're capable of getting better than that. And it can be time to really work on yourself. And I think part of that process is changing jobs.
So in our industry, there's a lot of young people, right? Our industry is almost like the temporary industry to a certain extent.
Mm.
Like your first job when you're in high school is going to be a McDonald's or it's going to be a Taco Bell. And then you're going to work as a server when you're in college and you're going to get tips. And you're in pursuit of something else, and this is just the temporary. So as a whole in the food service industry, what can we do to create a culture that allows people not only to see us as a temporary destination, but this can be the finish line and they can grow and they can be something that they can go to college to become?
I would love us as employers to absolutely set aside the fact that we pay our workers. Yeah, that's the transaction. That's table stakes. But that's not actually doing anything for people other than meeting the absolute minimum legal requirement to have an employee-employer relationship. I would love us as employers to say, during this person's time with me, what am I doing to ensure that they are growing personally, professionally, soft skills, hard skills, that I am making them more valuable such that I want to and can pay them more money? I think when we look at it like that as an industry, we will be way more likely to keep people longer, because we will help unlock the talent and the aptitude and the intelligence and the confidence and the self-esteem that is inside potentially almost all humans. Um, and if we're the ones unlocking that and magnifying that and nurturing that, statistically, some people will start to think, oh, I thought this was temporary, but why would I go somewhere else? Look at me now. And we do this as an industry in certain places, and sometimes we do it really well. There's a lot of these stories. People start as a dishwasher and they end up an executive chef, and so on. They start as a busboy and they end up owning a restaurant. So we're capable of this. I just don't think that we do it at scale en masse really consistently. So that's the framework mentally that I want to advocate changing for, is if we make them more valuable, more of them will stay. And it's this like rising tide effect, because it means that it's the better our workers do, the better our supervisors are, the better our managers are. And again, you can spend your money and put your energy into people, and you do it well, it's going to make the business more money. So instead of squeezing people to get all the work out of them, this is about lifting them up so they bloom. And it is the blooming, growing employee that drives the success of a restaurant.
How do you instill that to your employees at the management level in the stores?
We've been doing this long enough now that we have these living, breathing stories walking around the restaurant. And so, talk is cheap, talk is easy. If you tell people how great you're going to treat them, first of all, they're skeptical because they probably haven't been treated very well elsewhere. So they come in with a mindset of like, well, I'm not going to believe what you say because I've heard this, before. Um, so it's really about walking the talk, but you don't have to start with the talk. You just do it. And then when you do it and you have examples, it's much better when new employees hear about a career path from their supervisor or their executive chef or their general manager or the vice president of marketing or the director of training. And when they hear the people at Founding Farmers tell their own stories, and those people look like the employee, whether it's look like them on the surface, right? Skin color, ethnicity, background, or look like them socioeconomically, like, wow, you grew up there, or you had that same experience, or your parents are divorced too, or like whatever the thing is. And that's how we that's how we do it at this point, is just to continue the process. In the beginning, it's just me and Mike and a really small team in one restaurant. And so if you believe in this stuff and you're doing it, it's just, I don't start off orientation with, we're going to be really nice to you. You start off orientation with, I'm so glad you're here. Are you hungry? Can I get you a drink? I love your sneakers. Like, we're lucky that you took the job. I'm glad you're here. Let's dive into the material and learn some stuff today. So I don't think that it's what you tell people, it's what you show people.
So right now, I've been hearing a lot of stories of people who, whether they be fresh out of college or they're fresh out of high school, there is a sense of entitlement when it comes to how much they feel like they should be making. And I feel like there could be a misconception from the top leaders who think that, oh, you're an entitled spoiled brat. You want this, you want all these benefits, you want this bigger check. What do you think is the biggest misconception that would help the leaders understand the younger generation better when it comes to the hiring process and the development process?
Jeremiah, I love this topic. Step one, what I do for myself, I'm 54 years old. Anytime I feel myself about to criticize the younger generation, I stop and I shut my own mouth and I remind myself that for probably as long as humans have been around, the old ones criticize the young ones. And I just don't think that the criticisms are useful or valuable or even frankly accurate. They're sort of 40, 50, and 60 and 70-year-olds telling, 18 and 19 and 24-year-olds everything that's wrong with them. Except when I was 18 or 21, I could have criticized that me knowing what I know now. And so, I'm Gen X. They told us like, oh, video games would ruin us. We were slackers, I think was the term for Gen X. Like, I can't think of a more wrong description of a generation. But the old people said we were slackers. So, as leaders now, what our job is to try to understand and learn from the younger generation. Meet them where they are. Instead of criticizing anything about them, understand those attributes about them. Reflect on why we don't like those attributes about them. And then look to lift them up so that they give us what we want, or maybe that we learn some things from them and we realize that actually what we think we want, we don't want anymore. If what we wanted is you need to bleed like I bled, you need to like shut up and get yelled at and be underpaid and be disrespected because I was. And if you don't want to tolerate that, then there's something wrong with you. Well, just think about that. It doesn't sound ridiculous when I say that. And so as leaders, we'll do far better with the younger generation and our P&L and our guest and our profit. This is still a capitalist view of this, and I guess I would say a conscious capitalist. This younger generation is amazing. These kids are remarkable. I feel guilty for this generation that the older generation has done them dirty with allowing the cell phone addiction, just like the older generation did the baby boomers really dirty and some of Gen X by letting them smoke cigarettes. But eventually people figured out cigarettes are bad. And now I think like less than, I don't know, 10 or 14% of America smokes. Probably half of them, wish they didn't, but they can't quit. So these younger generation, they are addicted to their phone. It's affecting them, I think, in a lot of negative ways. And they also have plenty of strengths. And I see plenty of people at all ages absolutely addicted to their phone. And so, I don't know. This generation is amazing. I have 3 of these. My boys, Cooper, Oliver, and Finn, age 21, 19, and 16. And I try to have the same guideline for myself as a parent. Like if I hold them to my standard of who I am today, I'm just an old curmudgeon criticizing young people. If I try to see the world through their eyes, meet them where they are, I will do the best for them and I will help them do the best for me.
Wow. Speaking of like cell phones and social media, one thing that I realize is you can become so fixated on what other people are doing in their life that it feels like every 25-year-old is a millionaire. Every 30-year-old has a G-Wagon. And then you start to compare yourself. Do you feel like those comparisons, they do infiltrate our industry to where people do feel either less than or insecure for being a server or for going down this path? It's almost like the road less traveled. Do you feel like social media kind of contributes to people going in and out of the service industry?
I certainly think that watching and having it in everyone's face all the time, uh, you know, young crypto content producer, 25-year-olds pouring champagne over their own heads in hot tubs. I can see why that is like, if I was that age, I'd be thinking like, shit, I want to do that too. And I guess if I can't get there, I feel bad about myself. So I think it's a real thing. But I don't know, life has never been easy. Um, I think that the downside of that, and maybe what comes out with some of this, is where older people think this younger generation is so entitled. Like, well, I mean, I should start work and now I should be the boss and I should be a vice president already and you should pay me more money. That attitude is probably, to some degree, internet, social media influenced, created. But I don't worry about it because reality is going to slap that attitude right off of people soon enough. Like you can be as entitled as you want to be. And regardless of the reason why you're entitled, you're just going to overplay your hand and then you're going to lose that hand. And then you're going to overplay your hand again and you're going to lose that hand. And pretty soon you're going to realize like, shit, my approach to life and poker, I need a dose of reality and I need to play the hand I actually have. So there's a little bit of wisdom in life that just needs to sort of happen, and I think that entitlement goes away, and maybe the folks, the younger generation that is influenced that way by seeing it online, will realize, wow, by watching this stuff all day, I'm just making someone else rich while I'm making myself worse. I'm actually, my prediction is that this addiction to that, what I would describe as valueless content, like the mindless zombie scrolling, brain rot, etc. I think it's kind of like cigarettes and vaping. Like, people are going to do it, then they're going to realize it's bad for them. Some will remain addicted, some will end up permanently damaged, but I don't think it stays the dominant form of what people are going to be doing with, 50 hours a week, like a lot of people are doing it now.
Yeah, that's good. I love that optimistic outlook. Um, One thing that I was thinking of just now as you're talking is, and I know you're almost out of time here, but so with you and your journey, you were loyal to the journey that you had and to the purpose that you had, to the point where even those moments where you failed, you got yourself back up somehow and you continue to persevere. What would you say right now to that next generation and even leaders now who have maybe they've been striving to become a president or, become a CEO and they haven't gotten there yet? What would you tell them about being loyal to the journey and to their purpose?
Failure is not the opposite of success. Failure is part of the vital ingredients. Failure is some of the mise en place in the recipe for a perfect dish. So I would just say that keep going. I love that expression. I won't get it exactly right, but in martial arts, they say the ones that become a black belt are just the ones that never stopped going to the dojo. And so you can't always, you don't get to the goal on the timeline you want. And so I say, let go of the timeline. Just keep doing the journey. Just keep doing the steps, and it will get you somewhere. But for me, I don't hold out the goal as the reason for the steps. My reason is the steps. Like, I'm working on myself because I want to work on myself. If I say I'm working on myself because I want to win a gold medal and it's all about the gold medal and it's all about the gold medal, man, that journey is full of sadness and failure when every day going to practice at the gym, on the mat, in the kitchen, on the floor, wherever you practice your craft, that's the work. That is the goal, is the process, the routine, doing it in alignment with your character and your principles, with people that you love and a team, and lifting people up. So that's like my recipe for me. And so when I fail along the way, I acknowledge it. Like, okay, well, that's expected. And don't get me wrong, I hate to lose. Like, I hate losing, but not because I love winning. It's I hate losing. And so trying to avoid the loss is what, for me, drives me to the practice and the methodology that I think ideally leads to the winning. And these are personal journeys. My words and my approach doesn't mean it's right for anyone else, but hopefully it just helps people know that at any level you're at, if you're an executive VP and the goal is to be CEO and it's not happening yet, maybe think less about the goal of being a CEO and focus on being the most amazing, value creating version of yourself today. And I'm just a believer that that ends up opening the right doors or helping you kick those doors down to get you to a good place.
Wow, I resonate with all that so deeply. Recently, I've been understanding that my whole purpose is making an impact in others and seeing how I can make that impact on a daily basis. It's been inspiring me and it's been encouraging me. It's been motivating me to wake up in the morning and to really strive. And in the past, I used to have like this goal as if one day I'm just going to win the Oscar of life, the Grammy of life. And finally taking a step back and understanding every single day there's purpose. Every single day there's something that is to attain. There's a win that you can have every single day. It has been inspiring for me. And one thing that you just said, I'm going to probably like hold on to is let go of the timeline. That is so valuable, because I know for me, especially in my early 20s, you just think by the time I'm 21, I want to do this. By the time I'm 25, I want to be here. At 30, I want to be here. And then when you're not there at 30, you become depressed. I was really sad, and just my 29 to 30 was like a really rough year for me. But I encourage other people who are about to turn 32 to let go of the timeline and just be in the now and understand that, you have an opportunity to be great. So thank you so much, Dan, for having this conversation with me. I really appreciate it. And it's so great to have you back here on the Prosper Brief. We'll see you guys next time.
Thanks so much.